What are you doing, Daddy?
Trying to take over the world, Tyler. Welcome to the Awesome Black Dad Show, your number one podcast for and about black dads. I'm your host, creator Terrell Lindsay, and I created this show with the hope that I can encourage, empower, educate, and in the process, entertain fathers in a way that inspires us to be a better version of ourselves. Today, we get an opportunity to chop it up with Renshawn Miller, founder and executive director of Eustress Inc. The mission of Eustress is to raise awareness on the importance of mental health in underserved communities, allowing individuals to identify and overcome challenges to achieve a healthier and more productive lifestyle. Renshawn is a licensed professional counselor associate, mental health advocate, and social entrepreneur. For so long, we have been dismissive as black men about the status of our mental health, and it's high time that we have more of these conversations in a way that it becomes more open and we become more aware to the fact that mental illness is real. In this episode, we talk about suicide, the myths of mental health, why just praying won't work, some real solutions, and much, much more. First off, I want to welcome you to the Awesome Black Dad Show, and thanks for taking the time out of your schedule. I know you just released your book, Injured Reserved, and so I know you're pretty busy.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I reached out. The reason I reached out is because one of the primary missions of this platform is to educate men and fathers in a way that we can become better versions of ourselves. And I know that one of the main things that seem to be taboo in our community is that, especially amongst black men, the subject of mental health. And so I really want to get into it and get into a little bit of a discussion about mental health. But before we get into that, I ask all of the people that I interview who they are. So who is Renshawn Miller?
Well, let's see. Country boy from Lewiston, North Carolina. A lot of people don't even know where that's at. Just based off of, it's a very small town. We literally only have one stoplight. Born and raised, scholar, athlete, graduated in the top of my class, and played football, basketball, and track. From there, ended up going to school at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and walked on to the football team and the track team there as well. And eventually, it led to something where I was dealing with a lot of different stressors, and I ended up in a psychiatric ward of a hospital, diagnosed with bipolar disorder. From there, just dealing with different things as far as managing those symptoms and just trying to understand what was actually going on. It was scary and led to the fact of me not addressing the issues the way I needed to, led to me trying to self-medicate with alcohol and drinking a fifth of tequila every other day.
Ooh, this is college, right?
This was my second year in college. Yep. Second year in college.
Okay.
And it was something that most people didn't pick up on any red flags or anything, because I mean, that's quote unquote normal behavior for college students to dib and dab in alcohol and drugs and all of those things.
Right.
But also during that time period, OD'd on pills twice in an attempt to suicide. And the very last time I put a gun in my head and pulled the trigger, and the gun jammed.
Ooh. Yeah. So, I mean, so after that moment, is that when you had an awakening, like, okay, something needs to change? When did you figure out that there's more going on, and you needed to find some help?
Well, it was definitely after that time. I know I wanted to. Well, one thing is a lot of times people say that people that kill themselves, they're selfish or they take the cowardly way out and all of
Mm-hmm.
those types of things. I hear it all the time. I actually heard it the other day when I was speaking with one of my friends,
Mm-hmm.
but that was far from the truth. It was the fact that I was thinking about everybody else but myself at the time because I felt like everybody was worried about me. I felt like I was, if I was no longer here, it'll be a lot better place for other people.
Right.
So, and then I wanted to, and I was in pain emotionally, and I wanted to end the pain. But it was something, yeah, that's when, I tried to take my life 3 times and it didn't work. So that's when I was like, okay, Sean, something got to change. Because when I initially got out of the hospital the very first time, so this is spanning over a period of about 7 years.
Okay.
And then the only people that really only knew what was going on, well, only people that knew I went to the hospital and my diagnosis were my close family members. None of my friends or any of them knew. So that's why it was a lot easier for me to mask what was really going on because they didn't they didn't know that I went to the hospital and I was in there and in a straitjacket and all of those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I was like, well, one thing that did help me out when I initially got out the hospital is I went to therapy and I got on medication. But of course, we don't know enough about mental health and mental health issues. Once you start to feel better, you be like, okay, I don't need this anymore.
Right. Yeah, and I definitely want to get into the whole the conversation about the pills or whatever it is in terms of being able to manage the mental health issues because obviously we don't have these conversations in our community, so we don't know a whole lot about the triggers, what it looks like, how to handle
Mm-hmm.
it. I recently just had a conversation with the father. He has a daughter, and we were talking about what it's like to be a man in our community, and he was saying that we as men you have to suck it up, and I had to tell him like, we have to be very careful with the way that we continue to teach people around us about what it means to be a man, meaning sucking the air in and taking on all the pressures around the world, because mental health really, it really matters, right? So
Mm-hmm.
even with me right now, and I'm disclosing this a little bit. I'm not saying that I have mental health issues, but recently I've been dealing with certain levels of anxiety, and I don't know if it's related to stress or a number of things that I've picked up. But I'm starting to, after keeping up with you and then seeing you on the Breakfast Club and listening to those things, it made me take a better account of the things that are going on in my life to
Mm-hmm.
look for triggers or flags, and then begin to have conversations with my mom about our family history, and even with my dad that I'm not necessarily as connected with today as I would like to be, but still to have that conversation and go back in our DNA. But I
Right.
say that to say, what are some of the triggers? You mentioned that when you were going through this, none of your friends really knew. What are some of the triggers that we can kind of pay attention to, like in our circles, so the people that we know and we hold dear to us? What are some of the things that we can pay attention to maybe assist so that they don't get to the point to where they're thinking about suicide and those things, if we can?
Well, one thing is to pick up on, especially if you know a person well, if you hang out with this person all of the time and you know their patterns. Once you notice a change in their patterns, that's a red flag. Like let's say if the person is very talkative,
Mm-hmm.
or they are very outgoing and always around people. When they start to withdraw from people and don't want to actually really talk about certain things, that's something where it comes down. You need to want to ask, like, so what's going on? What's wrong? Also, for one thing, that I think just in general, we don't check on people enough. I think we get so caught up in our own world and we worry about our own problems that we don't just shoot a text to somebody and be like, how are you doing? Or when you shoot the text, not when you ask really and not being really genuine concern about what's really going on with the person.
Mm-hmm.
It's more so of a hey than I want to know what's really going on with you.
Right. So don't make it seem as if you're trying to be nosy. Like I see something going on. What's going on? Just maybe just stay in contact in a way that your friends become a little bit more comfortable with you in the moments in which they need to share something or get something off their chest.
Exactly.
Okay.
Another thing is to pick up on, if someone's gaining weight or losing weight at a fast pace.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some things. Also, that alcohol and drug use. If you notice somebody is, drinking a lot or, experimenting with other drugs, that's something that too made me want to bring attention to certain things. And I know that we probably, especially in our community, we have people that's all they do is drink anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them why they drinking because they
Yeah.
like,
I mean that's an interesting question, but it's interesting in the way because I never think to ask that. Like if we're in a social setting, it's like I either assume we're drinking to get rid of some of the stresses of the day, or it's just the social thing. It's like going
right.
to the gym and playing basketball. It's as an adult, it's almost as if it's expected. Like have a drink or not. It's not something that we would necessarily pay attention to whether or not somebody's drinking a little bit more, unless it just gets excessive, right?
Right. Right.
But no, I definitely hear what you're saying in terms of paying attention to that from a trigger perspective.
And I mean, you thinking about even, people that drink alone,
Mm-hmm.
just certain things like that, or they're rolling up all the time.
Hey, I know you don't smoke weed. I know this. But I'm gonna get you high today. Cause it's Friday, you ain't got no job, and you ain't got shit to do.
Man,
Right.
I know somebody that smokes all day, every day. Like, I mean, I know cannabis, they're finding healing properties to it, but you
Right.
don't have to smoke all day, every day.
Right. That's
To,
right. There are
like,
some cannabis scientists out here that will give you the rundown. Right.
right, right. So I want to be like, bruh, so what's really going on? What are you
Right.
really trying to run away from?
Mm-hmm.
You know, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask when you mention run away, because a lot of those things, devices that we get, allow us to go into these spaces that allow us to run away. Like I know for men, and some of the black men that I know, it, I would consider, you can call it a cave. I think TD Jakes before has called it like men in their caves. We have our vices in our caves, and if we get in that cave, sometimes it's hard. It's hard to get out of those spaces. So what do you recommend? The vices that we're talking about right now in terms of like alcohol and then rolling up. What
Mm-hmm.
other things do you do to begin to combat some of the stresses that you have in life, or some of the triggers that we just discussed in a more positive way?
For me, exercise is key
Okay.
because physical health definitely plays a part into how you perceive things mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So just being active, I mean, it's science behind it where you increase certain chemicals in your body when you become active and you start to work out or you start to run and any types of physical activity. So that's something that definitely helps out for me. Another thing is I journal a lot because we have a lot of these emotions and feelings going on and we sometimes we don't even know how to verbally put into words what's really going on.
Right.
So I just jot stuff down sometimes and just write it out and then try to sort it out and to get it out of my head.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. One of the first things that I did as a part of this platform was start a blog, right? And so the purpose of the blog was to give fathers the opportunity to express themselves without feeling the pressure of having to do it amongst friends or in the space of people actually listening to them and looking at them. I know that can cause a bit of anxiety as well. So I created the blog to give dads an opportunity to write their stories or what they're going through at the moment, to get it out, because I know that for me, sometimes I'm a prisoner of my own thoughts because it's just a bit of who I am. So I'm trying to work around that because I get caught up in it, in that analysis paralysis, and it becomes, at the older I get, it becomes more of a prison because growing up, I had basketball as a release, right? And I had all these athletic things, and I was more what's the word?
Active.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I was more active, right? And so those things allowed me the room to be able to not worry about the things that were trapped in my head. But the older I got and then got married and then had kids, right? And then now the pressures of being the provider in the household and all those things, it's like I get trapped in there, and that becomes one of the most, for me, it's becoming one of the scariest things for me, because then I don't know how to get out. And so I have to, that's why I'm starting back running and getting back more active, because it helps me clear my mind and be more deliberate about those things. So, I absolutely agree with that as well, man.
I think one of the key things is, like you said, is you have to be more intentional about taking care of yourself, because you can't take care of anybody else if your body is breaking down.
Right.
So, you get into the point where you worry about taking care of your kids and you worry about taking care of your wife and providing. But if you get to the point where you're too sick to even work, like, I mean, what justice are you doing for them? Yeah, it's more of it's a marathon instead of a sprint.
Right.
And so you gotta do the preventive maintenance on your body and on your mind to make sure that you're there for them in long term.
Right. And so that's another thing that we really don't delineate between in terms of sickness. When we say sickness, at least in our community, in terms of how we talk about it, if somebody mentions sickness, it's more along the lines of physical sickness. When we talk about sickness from a mental health perspective, it's almost as if we dismiss it in a way that we can't do anything about it. It's like, some might not be right. Like, we got, I won't say everybody, but in your family, everybody kind of has a cousin or aunt, uncle, or something like that, maybe even a brother or sister that might not be, that might be a little questionable. You just like, something ain't right with that decision, something ain't right with that action, but we dismiss it. Different from in a physical sense, if we fall and then we cut ourselves and it's a deep gash and we can't put a Band-Aid on it, we go to the emergency room and get stitches. Right. So, and I don't know what we need to do to begin to change that. There's some things and practical steps that I would like to take in my household to begin to, to learn a bit more about it and just to talk about it for sure. But, before we get to those practical steps, I wanted to ask, what are some of the myths surrounding mental health in our communities that you've heard or seen that you had to deal with yourself? I know one of the things you mentioned in one of your interviews was just we always talk about, well, just pray about it, So, go ahead. I'm not gonna.
Oh yeah. So the myth about just praying about it and that you're not going to church enough or you're not believing in God enough, and that's why you're dealing with these demons and stuff now. I don't, knock anyone's beliefs, spiritual or religious, but a lot of times when I have to look at it, I mean, I grew up a Christian as a Christian household, and in the Bible it says faith without works is dead. So I mean, praying about it is one thing, but then also you have to do something about it. I feel like if you believe in God, there are reasons why that God has these doctors here and why we have different medications and why we have all these different techniques to address these issues. So you have to, pray about it, but then also you have to do the work to get better. Right. It's not just going to magically just, anything change. Another thing is we in our Black community, we think that certain mental illnesses and mental health challenges don't affect us. Mm-hmm. We always feel like, that's a white person. That's white people go to see therapists. Mm-hmm. Like, they go see shrinks, quote unquote. But that's not true. I mean, we're people when it comes down to it, and we all deal with certain things at certain times. Especially for me as a Black man, mm-hmm. Black men don't cry. Yeah, that's one, right. You don't want to show any type of weakness, so you always have to be strong. And then on top of that, you only emotion we're allowed to show is anger and happiness. That's the only thing that we're allowed to show.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely something that's it's so many different myths medication, like they're saying medication is not the best for people, or sometimes some people need medication because some mental health challenges are based off of chemical imbalances.
Mm-hmm.
And not saying that you always have to be on certain medications, but it all depends. It varies from person to person.
Right.
Yeah, it's so many things. Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I think those two things are definitely some of the big roadblocks in terms of being able to get over the hump and begin to at the very least have these conversations in a way that we can begin to address the issues that we see, within our households, not just our communities. We can start with our households. We walk through a house where we see people that might have some issues and might need some medication to level them out and balance them out, and then begin to find a way to wean them off the medication if that's the case. But it's just the knowledge of those things, and that's obviously one of the reasons why I'm really happy that you took the time to be able to be on, because I know that just among the guys that I hang with and the people that I'm having conversations with and the people that are interacting with the platform or the podcast are dealing with a lot of things but don't know where to put it. Right. And it can lead to other things. You might not have mental health issues that exist in your DNA, but you can kind of create it with all the things that life brings you. Right. And so being able to have this conversation is absolutely great. I did want to get into, I got ahead of myself, and I wanted to get into more about what it is that you do today. And so is your current condition the reason why you went down the path of clinical psychology, right? And so, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Just because I wanted to become a therapist, just because when I was first diagnosed and I was first in the hospital, I was scared because of the things that I was going through, but I was also terrified because no one in there looked like me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't trust anybody in there.
Right.
Like,
just off the simple fact that they didn't look like you just didn't feel comfortable.
Right. No comfortable. I wasn't comfortable at all, just because we don't trust people outside of our communities anyway. Is because, you look at the history of just the different trials and stuff medically and all those things that are going on, like the Tuskegee experiments and things of that nature. We don't trust people. Mm-hmm. So if you don't look like me, I'm already a reserve, and I'm not gonna tell you what's going on with me anyway. Because for one, I don't trust you. But then for two, I don't think you can relate to me. And then for three, like, I don't know what you would do with this information. Who are you gonna tell?
Right.
Like I don't want to be called crazy, and then having someone else call me crazy outside. And then we grew up in our communities. What goes on in this house stays in this house.
Yes.
So,
oh my God.
God. So like, I'm sitting in the hospital in a straitjacket, and the doctor asking me what's going on. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm straight with my arms tied behind my back.
Right. I'm good. Like, he looking at me like, oh, you sure you're good? I was like, yeah, I'm good. So we hold that it's that notion that we have to keep what's in-house, and it's something that I don't know. It's weird, man.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, man. And all of that stuff, I believe, needs to change in our culture. I think that there's, me personally, I think that there's a balance of it all. I think that there are some things that absolutely need to stay in your house, meaning you don't need to necessarily share with your outer circle. But that doesn't mean that you can't discuss those things. Like, they'll say those things, like your parents will say those things, like don't let it leave this house. But it doesn't leave the house, and we don't talk about it in the house. So we still don't know what the hell is going on. Like, okay, so we're just going to sweep this thing under the rug and just hope, again, back to just pray about it, that everything just kind of gradually gets better with the next day. And all of that absolutely needs to change. And it's funny that you bring up trust in the age of social media. And all the images and the videos that come out and the people that we kind of get drawn towards and we let be our truth, right? And so I wanted to ask how much of these images that are portrayed contribute to psychotic breaks today.
For personally, I know a lot of the things that I see on social media and that's going around. I can't look at like the different shootings and everything that goes on just because it triggers something. And we become desensitized to a lot of the stuff where, black men are getting killed in these streets, or just even from just a general topic of social media with kids these days, they're getting picked on, and cyberbullying is definitely something that's very prevalent in today's society.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely plays a major role in how we perceive ourselves. And then, I mean, also even just not even just the negative part, but then we comparing ourselves to other people that, people post their best life on social media.
Yeah.
And so we're always comparing ourselves to them and then trying to figure out, how can we get better? That way we add that extra stress to ourselves, and, that can spiral into other things.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I've been having conversations with a couple guys too. Like, I think we need to redefine what success looks like individually, right? So I think that, and not to get too far off on a tangent, because I know we got, we're running low on some time, but basically I'm saying that in the whole comparison model, it's like when I look at what Johnny might be doing. Johnny done bought a house, Johnny done bought a car, and I don't know what Johnny has done in between, and I don't even know if Johnny's successful. He might not even those things might not have been his goals. He might not have been trying to work towards those things. I have no idea how he got there. And those things might not make me happy. I might not need the same house that Johnny got or the same car. Those aren't my goals. We have to set our own goals and begin to look at success differently, and not from a materialistic perspective or just from looking at what Johnny is doing over here. Start
Right.
within, and then kind of, then use maybe Johnny as a competitive model to kind of, keep motivating yourself. But that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
And so in that, how do you think we begin as men? How do we think we begin to change the culture around mental health in our communities?
I think it's, for one, is changing the culture within your own circle.
Okay.
And then it'll spread from there. Like with your friends, a lot of times we can talk about sports, so we can talk about money or cars and girls to a certain degree, but we don't really talk about the things that really bother us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk, if you go through a breakup, you don't really discuss how that really hurts you. A lot of times we'll say, oh man, you'll be all right, just move forward. There's plenty of other women out here, or, just you'll be all right.
Right.
We don't really discuss our feelings, or we don't address it. Be like, yo, well, when I was going through a breakup, this is how it made me feel. So I'm pretty sure that you probably are hurting the same way. How can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're about to lose your job. You're stressed out. What things can I do to help you? What things do you want to really talk about? And it's creating that space within your own small circle where you can be completely honest and vulnerable with your friends. And it is not just talking about some basic stuff when it comes down to sports or anything. Have meaningful conversations with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Then I feel like that'll spread from you having meaningful conversations with your boys. Then your boys will have meaningful conversations with their families. And then we're teaching other people how to create these spaces where you can really talk about certain things. And then you'll realize that a lot of us are going through some of the same stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and it'll be a trickle effect, and then also that'll trickle down into us teaching our younger generations. You can talk about certain things. You don't have to always hide it, and you don't always have to feel like me open up with my emotions with you is not any sign of weakness. It's actually it's sort of a strength, because I'm manning up. I hate that term, but I'm manning up to open up myself to you so that you can understand what I'm going through and you can possibly help me in some type of way.
Right. And so can you dig a little deep in terms of why you hate the term manning up?
Because we teach our young men, oh, whenever you fall and you hurt something, man up. You don't have to cry. There's no reason to cry. Mm-hmm. If it hurt, why can't I cry?
Yeah.
It's that suck it up mentality and move forward, and internalize it, but move forward. It's one thing to acknowledge the pain and, understand that it hurts and then move forward. But then it's another thing to just completely disregard anything about it and then try to move forward and just try to push it to the back burner.
Right.
Like you said earlier, just sweep it under the rug and hope things will get better.
Right. Yeah, it's a big hope, but I think, even in the age of social media, I just think it's getting worse. The more that we look at people, not necessarily from a social media perspective in terms of looking at them and saying that there's something going on. I think I just, at least me personally, you begin to see a lot more the imbalance, right? Just not knowing how to handle certain things because all of the messages, and it's just, it gets harder and harder. So I'm looking for more preventative measures, because we know from a physical perspective, if you want to lose weight, you got to change your habits. Maybe you got to eat a little bit better. Maybe you got to run a little bit more. And so those things are there. But from a mental health perspective, we don't really know outside of going to see a shrink, or I shouldn't say shrink. I don't necessarily like that term, but going to see a counselor, or taking medication, all things that have negative connotations in our community. Those seem to be the only things that tend to be a preventative measure from a mental health perspective. And I know you mentioned, taking care of your body is a big part of it. But what other things do you do to continue to fight some of your issues that you have today still?
Well, one thing is, for me, I put myself on the schedule. I make sure that I take care of myself first before I take care of anybody else. In finance one-on-one classes, they say once you get your paycheck, you should pay yourself first and then you pay everything else. Mm-hmm. I try to do that every single day of my life. When I get up, I make sure I'm up every morning at 4:00. And the reason why I get up at 4:00 is because I give myself time to feed into myself. I meditate. Mm-hmm. I color. I journal. I work out. I do all of these things before I do anything else for anybody else in that day. So that way, a lot of times it's self-care.
Okay, so 2 questions. And one of these questions both of them kind of come from root of being married with kids. But what time do you go to bed to get up at 4 a.m?
Man, to be honest with you, I'm in the bed probably no later than like 1, depending on the night.
A.M.?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get back up at 4, and that's a routine for you. That's every day.
That's my routine.
Yeah, I don't know if I aspire to do that.
I know it's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody. It's your routine, but that's the point that you're making. You find your balance, find your sweet spot. And the second thing, it's interesting that you mentioned coloring. We both my sons like pancakes, and so we go to we'll visit Denny's or go to IHOP or something like that. And so they have the little play match where you can color and stuff. And so the kids will scribble on it, and they'll be done with it and move on to something else. Like I'll take the play mat and begin to like color, and for some reason, coloring seems to like take some of the stresses away. Like you just kind of. Yeah. I don't know what it is about it. It's interesting. I never mentioned it to anybody else, maybe to my wife once, because I felt like it was weird. It's like, man, I'm a 38-year-old dude, and I feel a release in like coloring little cartoons. But there is some release in that. Yeah,
it is. And I have a few adult coloring books, man, that I use. And it's definitely, it makes you focus on the task that you're doing and you get lost in it.
Right.
A lot of things that we did as children were very therapeutic, but we get away from it as we become adults because we feel like those are childish things. But it's definitely something that helps.
Right.
Why you think a lot of kids are so happy?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're right.
They play with Play-Doh. They color. They do
right.
They do these things.
And
they do things that they really enjoy.
Right. So any of the women that are listening to this episode, let your husband, your boyfriend play those video games. It lets him get lost in it.
Right.
That's his coloring book. Now I ain't saying let him play all day, every day. But if he's in there playing, give him a break. You don't know what he had to deal with that day, and sometimes he doesn't even know how to articulate it, right? So just give him the space to get lost in his coloring book, right? And and when he comes out of it, he might be better from it.
Right.
That's basically
right.
That's basically the gist of that. Go ahead.
it's funny that you say, especially when you're dealing with a member of the opposite sex or you're in a relationship. A lot of times women want men to articulate and communicate, but we've never been taught how to do those things.
No, sir.
So how can we really do it?
Yeah, I don't know. We can't. It's not that we can't, but just like you said, we haven't been taught those things, so it's foreign to us. And so the better we get in the relationships that we have, what we're supposed to do is to pay attention to those things and try to get better at being able to articulate some of those things, paying attention to the things that affect the people around us and being able to explain it, because it overall kind of helps that whole experience and it helps it extend a lot further. But it's just getting there, because it's extremely tough to get to a place to where you have to you got to really dig deep and kind of talk about how you're feeling. Again, it's back to the falling down and getting up and then crying and not letting it out. It's like, all right, I'll just deal with it. And I don't know, after a certain amount of time, I don't have words to really tell you about how I feel. It is what it is. And maybe tomorrow will be better. I don't know.
Right.
And some guys are better, that's why, you got to get in a space where you're talking to some older guys. And then maybe they can kind of, work you into the way, because, the older you get, maybe you get a little bit better with some of those things, but it's definitely a tough road. And so, I know I didn't ran over a little bit of the time that I had asked for, and I know you got things to do. Hopefully you have time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Really quick. And so I know, in doing the research, I know that you have you do a weekly conference call with Black men. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
So it's called Locker Room Talk. And it was really a spinoff of what our president at the current moment, he was saying that, men talk about certain things in the locker room that is shouldn't leave or shouldn't be for the public's consumption. But started the Locker Room Talk just to create a space for Black men to really just talk about different issues that affect our mental health. And it's Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. We only be up there for an hour. I'll actually have men call in from all over the country, and it creates this space where you can relate to a lot of different people as we talk about things like work. We talk about things like relationships or any other things that's going on in the world and how we feel about those things. And it's a great outlet, man. And then it's something that's therapeutic for the gentlemen that call in, because we can talk about things without being face to face.
Right.
Because like you said, sometimes that's very intimidating, and it is you don't never have to see these people. Some people, they don't know who you are unless you want to disclose it, and you don't even have to participate. You can just listen. And so that you can gain some insight from that way, and it just creates that safe space for individuals to let it off their chest, and feel like, oh, I'm not the only one that's feeling like this.
Right. No. So how? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, how can the guys that are listening, or anybody for that matter, that is listening, get involved with that? Like, what's the number? They go to your site. How does that?
So you'll go to my site, go to rashawn.com /locker room talk, and then you'll sign up there. Once you put in your name and your email information, you'll get the call in information too, so you can call in every Wednesday. They'll have the phone number and the PIN number there.
Okay, that's definitely cool. So the one last question I wanted to ask, and I pretty much asked everybody this, but if you had the opportunity to put an image or a phrase in every barbershop around the country, what would that be?
Image or a phrase. Every barbershop in the country.
Well, let me rephrase that. Well, no, I'll leave it at barbershop. I was going to say black barbershops, but it doesn't matter. Barbershops.
Yeah. Okay. How are you really feeling today?
That would be interesting. I wonder what the response would be. That's dope.
Because even, you know, we go to barbershops, we talk about a lot of different things with our particular barber.
Mm-hmm.
But, and you know, like I said, even with our friend circles, we talk about sports and we talk about politics and we talk about everything else, but we don't really talk about feelings and emotions. So I want to know how you really feeling. What's really going on with you?
Right. No, I get it. I think I'm gonna take that phrase to my barber tomorrow. Just put it in there. Tell him put it on his mirror and see what he get. Just try that one out and see what happens. Right. So Sean, man, I definitely appreciate you coming through, man. I really got to find out another way that I can continue to maybe have this conversation with you and do it again, because I'm sure the information that we talked about is going to be well received, man. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And good luck with the book for sure. It's Injured Reserve. I'll let you do your spiel, man. Tell us where we can find you and what you got going on, man.
Well, the book is out now. It's called Injured Reserve, a Black Man's Playbook to Manage Being Sidelined by Mental Illness. It can be found on injuredreservebook.com, and it's also on Amazon as well. So it has the ebook format there, and then you can also purchase the physical copy as well. Working on actually doing the audio book as well now too. So that should be out shortly. Any information that you want to find out about me as far as where I'm speaking or any other different projects that I have coming up, because I actually have a mental health journal coming out soon too. So I keep my website updated with those information. That's Rashawn.com.
Mm-hmm. And that's Rashawn spelled
RWENSHAUN.com. And I mean, if you get that spelling right, I'm the only person.
Right. Yeah. No. When I was doing some research, even just looking for you on Skype, it was like, put your name in. It's like that's the only one.
That's the only one, right?
It's very unique in the way it's spelled, for sure.
Right. But yeah. So social media is the same thing. I use my first name for all of those things: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of that. So be sure to reach out if you got any questions or anything. Definitely open to answering and helping out in any way that I possibly can.
Yeah.
Outside of that, man, I just appreciate you having me on, and I'm definitely open to being up here as much as you want. Just let me know. As long as we can coordinate it, we will be all right.
Man, I had so much more to ask Rashawn. And I know if I did, you did too. So look, this is what we're going to do. If you have a question that you would like to ask Rashawn, you can reach out one of two ways. You can send us an email at info@awesomeblackdads.com with the subject heading question for Rashawn. Rashawn spelled RWENSHAUN. Or you can leave a voicemail by clicking the Contact Us button on the Awesome Black Dads Facebook page. I won't make any promises, but your question may end up being featured in one of our next episodes with Rashawn. No promises, but we'll see what happens. Before we get out of here, do us a huge favor though. Subscribe to the Awesome Black Dads Show so that you can always and forever be up to date with our content. And while you're at it, drop us a review. It helps us get better as well as create more awesome, engaging content. Until next time, see you episode 7.